Burna Boy's Twice as Tall.
Mm.
Man, this album was uh, unexpected to me in terms of how much I really vibed with the whole thing, and just felt like it felt like the whole thing grooved and meshed so well. Burna Boy been blowing up, especially since last year's African Giant.
Mhm.
I think Ye is probably the song most people kind of know him from. But I mean, he was on the Stormzy album that we reviewed
Yes,
earlier
sir.
in the year, on a song with Ed Sheeran, actually. So
Hmm.
if you want to hear our opinion on Ed Sheeran, check that out. Um, Stormzy's back on this with him. He has a couple of great guests. And actually, I think his most high profile guest is like the only moment of the album I really just did not gel with. And we'll talk a little bit about that.
Comes out of left
But
field.
yeah, yeah, for real. But I want to, before we get too deep into it, temperature check for you on the album.
Yeah, Burna Boy, the Nigerian Afro-Fusion superstar, Grammy nominated for African Giant last year, did not win. I had listened to African Giant when I was abroad, actually in Prague. Getting my worldwide on,
So
and
lovely.
did like it a lot. And he's someone who I feel like has just been this really nice rise to see, because this is his fifth album, and he's had multiple ones on the majors, and it's just been a huge rise. And I think it's a really interesting story, which we can get to. But I liked it a lot. I think there's so many moments where it's just like, even if this is a genre that one's not super well versed in, I certainly am not well versed in Afrofusion and Afrobeat music. It's just so confident in what it is. I think does it in a really good way. And I was not expecting him to release a whole nother full length just like a year after African Giant. Yet here we are. He seems like he made this completely in quarantine, and then brought in Diddy to help him kind of shore up the loose ends at the end, which is kind of cool as well. But yeah, I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I was really impressed with how, and I think this is a common theme in the albums I really enjoy, but how there seemed to be like a central sound and theme, but it's still expanded into all these different genres. Like you talked about that Afro-Fusion, which I think comes across really well on obviously on a song like Wonderful, which is just like a total African jam. Real shot of adrenaline when I was driving in the car listening to this. I was like, oh, this goes. But the whole album, I mean, other than the song with Chris Martin, which is I guess probably the radio grab song on here, Monsters You Made, which still I think kind of holds that sound. And I think it's just Chris Martin's vocals don't really do what they were, I think, hoping it would do, or deliver what they hope it would deliver. But other than that, I felt like the whole album was really tight, expansive, fun, interesting. And the lyrical content, too, was also really impressive. He talked about a lot of really personal things, trials, tribulations, without ever kind of falling into like a difficult place with it. Like it always kind of kept moving and felt triumphant. So really enjoyed that. Give me a little bit about this backstory you mentioned about Burna Boy, because I think that plays a bit into where he's at now in this album.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think about Afrobeat music, Afro-Fusion music, I only really think of like Wizkid as someone who's came through here, and obviously think of the big moment he had with Drake, which really kind of exposed him to the West, as Drake has been known to bring other genres into the mainstream focus, because he, at the end of the day, is a fan of things. But
steals culture.
But in the case of Burna Boy, his success, his like slow success and rise to superstar, it was really cool to see, because if you listen to Twice as Tall, you listen to African Giant, you can tell that he's not compromising his African identity, his African musical influences, right? This music sounds really like that. You hear those rhythms and those distinct vocals that you associate. You mentioned Wonderful. You think of that background chorus early on in Wonderful that really has that African vibe. And songs like Naughty by Nature and Time Flies, where like that percussion again really feels like that's where it's from, right? But this kind of reminds me of the way reggaeton and Latin trap and even K-pop have just continued to be more and more successful here in the West and just find more and more acceptance without really changing what that music is. As you know, I think the gatekeepers have begun to go away with that on the internet and streaming, just increasing accessibility. This music from other places can be here in the West, and you know, if it's good, people will like it. They don't care where it's from, right? And like I think for me and you, we are not people that have listened to Afrobeat and Afro-Fusion all that long, but like that doesn't matter. You know, if it's good music, it's good music. So
exactly,
it's really cool to see just that validation again for someone who obviously is a really great artist, and he's now getting the return on that, you know, in the West. I know he spent a little time in London during his formative years, but did move back to Nigeria. So he puts on for where he's from, and it comes across the music. And again, that's just great to see. And you mentioned Chris Martin, and Monsters You Made was interesting to me because you listen, he has like that line about Burna Boy has that line about slaves and the minimum wage, and it's like actually one of his more poignant comments is on that song, but it has that big booming pop production that just feels out of place compared to the rest of the album, right? And
it does.
Actually, I think the most surprising thing for me though was the opening moments where you get that Pat Boone sample from 1959, which apparently was from the movie Journey to the Center of the Earth, where he's like, you know, that 50s show tune, have to be a little bit taller, you know. It's like, wow, where's this coming from? This is something. But then you listen to the album, and it's quite where it's from. So
I actually thought
really
Level
good.
Up, that opening track was a real display of production gold, because you have that sample that kind of leads it off, and then you have Yusufa Nafar and Burna Boy kind of going back and forth a bit, but then they bring the sample back, but it's just kind of like drowned out and starts to like almost fade into the drums, and it's kind of like they're taking that old school style and just like, we're just gonna put all our new like Afro sound and dancehall and reggaeton just like all into this right now, and it's just like a real, like, I feel like a tone setter for the rest of it. And even though it's probably not the track I would go back to the most, I thought that was a great table setter. And then the drums are such a driving force in this, like you mentioned, obviously a huge part of all these genres that Burna Boy kind of stands for, but especially that Afrobeat genre, like alarm clock. Like you get that feeling of like an alarm clock going off, like waking up, like getting that like rush of adrenaline as your day starts, kind of. A song like you mentioned Naughty by Nature. I thought I'm gonna mess this name up, but No Fit Vex. I think they said they pronounce it No Fit Ve or something like that. I thought that really embodied that Afrobeat sound too, with like the chanting that you mentioned, that chorus, and then you get Stormzy coming on with a bit more toned down,
softer
near the end of the album
for sure.
But I thought just really they blended together really well. Obviously, they've collabed a couple times now. Just really exciting, and I mean, like you said, I was not really tuned into when Burna Boy is going to be dropping his next album. I wasn't aware of African Giant, but to have it come out now and sound so strong and just like a vibrant kind of album dropped in the middle of all this greatness that we've had going on, just really, really cool moment. So definitely one of my favorite of the year for sure. Where's it at for you think?
Yeah, definitely up there. Yeah, I mean, just reading about it, this was made almost entirely in quarantine. And, you know, his work with Diddy is across multiple time zones because Burna was in Nigeria when he was making most of this. And, you know, those drums you cited on Alarm Clock, Diddy brought those drums in from none other than Anderson .Paak. And then little production from Timbaland on Wetin Dey Sup, which I thought was also another highlight. Honestly, the last 5 tracks I really like. Time Flies, after Monsters You Made, Wetin Dey Sup, Real Life, and Bank on It. I thought it was a really strong finish. And you know, I mean, you look, and Burna Boy's a name that has continued to pop up. Like, I know he had one of the big highlights on the Lion King album that just popped back up with Black is King from Beyonce, right? Same thing, the Ja R.A. song, which we had on our playlist last year. And he had a really big song with the UK rapper Dave, Location. Like, he's becoming a big force. And like just as you see these features coming up, you can tell that like the like the globalization of musical ideas is just continues, and that's awesome.
For sure. Definitely give this one a listen if you got a chance. Twice as Tall from Burna Boy. We'll have a track or two on our playlist as well. Real triumphant record. Really glad we got that one.